Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Ginny McGee, and I am an instructional designer here in the e-learning division of Camden County College. For those of you that don't know me, welcome. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to give you an overview of how to use the Gradebook in Canvas. And what I'm going to do first before we get started looking at the Gradebook is I want to just take a second to give a little plug here for the Canvas Faculty Hub. We just got this up and running at the beginning of this week. So the Faculty Hub is where our division is going to be posting any items that are relevant to Canvas and also any events that we have upcoming. So you should have on your dashboard, if you look at the top of the dashboard, if you have not already done this, you should see an invitation to join the Canvas Faculty Hub. It's going to say as a student, but that's just the role that you're in the hub. And just so I can quickly show you what is here. So we've got a lot of resources in the Canvas Faculty Hub. So if you click on this resources button, you're going to see a lot of videos and information on how to use Canvas. So basically, if you're trying to remember a little ways down the road when you have grades that you're needing to put in and you're saying, how do I create a gradebook column? I forget what Ginny said. You can come here and click on this video and it will show you exactly how to do that. So keep that in mind as a resource. Also, in the Faculty Hub, you'll see information about upcoming workshops and webinars with the links to sign up for them. And we're also going to post the Canvas release notes. Canvas likes to make changes to the system periodically, and we'll keep you informed about those items that are going to be coming up. So if you did not get an invitation or you don't see an invitation at the top of your dashboard to join the Faculty Hub, please send me an email after the training. You will get my contact information after the training if you don't have it already, and I'd be happy to add you to the Canvas Faculty Hub so that you do have access to all of this information. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started with looking at how we can set up our grade books in Canvas. I'm going to be working in this course today. This is a fake course with fake students. So in Canvas, you cannot actually, when you're in your grade book here, there is no way to add a column to the grade book from the gradebook page. You also cannot set up your weighted gradebook groups if you use that for your course from here. All of this has to be done from your Assignments tab, and you will find your Assignments tab in the left-hand navigation menu when you are in your course. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Assignments tab. So when I'm training instructors, I always ask who uses the weighted groups system for their course, and it seems like it's usually a little more than half. So either you're going with straight points where you have a total number of points that's possible for the semester, and then you have your number of points that a particular student earned, you divide, and then you get the grade. Or the other option would be that you've got weighted groups. So maybe 40% of your grades come from, or 40% of the points come from exams, 20% from participation, and so on. Seems like a little more than half of the instructors do it that way. So what I want to show you first is how to set up those assignment groups if that is indeed how you run your class. If you are a straight points person, you can take a nap for a couple minutes, or you may want to pay attention in case you ever do need to set up a class this way. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm in my Assignments tab here, and I am going to click on my assignment settings. Canvas calls these 3 vertical dots, they call this a kebab. It took me a while to get used to using that word, but I guess I'll use it because I don't have a better one. So this is how we get to our assignment settings. I'm going to click on my kebab, and then I am going to click on this assignment groups weight button here. So again, this is only if you do want to set up weighted groups for your course. So I need to check this box, and when you do that, you are going to have a default category that's going to pop up. There's always going to be an assignments tab or assignments group here that is in there by default that has a 0% weight. I am going to leave this for now, and I'm just going to go ahead and click Save. So now I have told Canvas that I do need to set up weighted groups for my course, and I am going to go ahead and add another group now. So I can, if I have my syllabus in front of me, or I know offhand what my groups are, I can go ahead and just click this Add Group button, and I can add another group. And of course, everyone's items are going to be different, so you might have additional groups from what I have here, and that's absolutely fine. There is no list that you have to choose from. You can call your groups whatever you want, and you can assign whatever value you want to them. I will say that if any point, I should have mentioned this earlier, but if at any point during this you have a question, please feel free to type it into the chat box, and I'll be happy to pause and answer questions for you. If it's something that is maybe not quite on topic to what we're going over right now, you can wait. It may be addressed later, and then if not, we will have a time for Q&A at the end of this session. So I now have my tests assignment group in here that's worth 40%. I'm going to go ahead and add in the rest of my groups. It's only suggesting items for me because I've already typed these in. So I'll just say that I'm going to have participation will be worth 20%. We'll have homework, also 20%. So whatever it is that you have. Now I have this default assignments group. If you don't have a group called assignments, you can always delete a group if you need to. Again, I'm going to click on the kebab, this time the one that is inside this particular group. And it's going to ask me if I want to edit it, delete it, move it, or move its contents. So I'm going to click on edit here. From here, I could edit the name of the group. I can give it a percentage. And this is also where, once I do have assignments in an assignment group, I'll also have the option to ignore certain scores for a student. So some instructors like to drop, let's say, the lowest quiz score or the lowest test score. I can set that up right here. If you really want to tick your students off, you could drop the highest score. I don't think I've ever been in a class that has done that, but they do give you that option. But I'm going to stick with dropping the lowest score, and I'm going to click Save. It will not give you that option until you actually have some assignments in the assignment group. So now I've got my assignment groups set up, and I can always move items. So I have these 3 that are called for my tests, and I can actually just move them around within a group, or I can actually move them into a different group if I need to, just by dragging them and dropping them into the group where they go. So once I have my assignment groups set up with the weights put in, I've done the bulk of the work for setting up my gradebook. Because now, anytime I create an item in Canvas that will be graded, all I will need to do as part of that process is designate what assignment group it's going to go into. And then it will correctly weight that item based on the assignment group. Now, one little tip here, I do suggest that you try to keep all of the items in an individual group so that they are worth the same amount of points. So Canvas does take into consideration the point value that you assign to something when it is giving it a weight. So for example, all of these tests are worth 100 points. So it's going to give the same amount of weight to each of these. If I create another test in here and I make that test worth 200 points, it's going to weight that 200-point test twice as much as it is the 100-point tests, which is fine. So Canvas is going to do the math correctly. It's going to come out perfectly fine if you do have varying point values within a group. The only problem that you could run into with that is I've had some instructors who maybe had one test that was worth 36 points and one that was worth 48 points. What happens is Canvas takes that into consideration and it's going to divide up the value of that 40% among those tests. It will do the math correctly, but you may end up with a little bit of some funky looking grades in your grade book. Your total could end up being like 92.753% or something, because it's trying to divide up the weights correctly within that category. So it will do it right, and it's fine to do it that way, but if you want your grades to kind of look pretty and be a little bit more clear-cut and easier to understand how much weight each item has, you may want to try to keep those values the same. If anybody has any questions about setting up your weighted groups, go ahead and type that into the chat. Now, of course, these are all groups, so I am going to need to create assignments or items to put in these groups. So for example, this tests right here, I'm not going to be able to put a grade in here for this tests group. This test group is going to calculate a grade based on what the students got on test 1, test 2, and test 3. It's going to take the average of that to come up with the weight for each student. So now that I have my weighted groups set up, now I am going to need to create columns in my gradebook so that I can actually grade my students' work. So in Canvas, if you're in here and you're using the quizzes tool to create quizzes, as I mentioned, it's going to ask you when you create a quiz what weighted group you want to put your quiz into. But what we're going to look at right now is for my face-to-face instructors, all you want to do in this example that we're going to do right now is you just want to create a column in the gradebook so that you can enter your students' grades on a test, for example, that you gave in class. So this isn't something that you created in Canvas that they turned in through Canvas, but you still need to be able to put their grades into the Canvas gradebook. The way that we do that is by creating an assignment. So I've already created my groups. I'm not going to click on the Add Group button. I'm going to click on the Add Assignment button. So let's say I've already got tests 1, 2, and 3. So let's say this is going to be test 4 here. There's a space where you can put information if you want to, but all I'm wanting to do with this exercise here is just create a gradebook column. So I am just going to skip right over that. I do need to designate how many points. My other 3 exams are worth 100 points. I'm going to make this one worth 100 points as well. That way, the 40% for that group that I designated will be divided evenly among all of my 4 tests. And then here is where I choose what assignment group this item is going to go in. So I want to put this in my tests group so that it weights it properly. And then I need to decide how I want that grade to be displayed. This is basically how am I going to enter this grade into the gradebook. Most used is going to be percentage or points. Now, if it's out of 100, obviously, it's not going to really make a difference whether it's percentage or points because it's going to be the same numeric value there. But let's say if this test was only worth 50 points, I would want to make sure that when I'm putting my student's grade in, if I have designated to display the grade as points, if a student got a 50 out of 50, I don't want to put 100%, 100 in the grade column, because that's going to take it as they got 100 points out of 50. And the student is going to be extremely happy with that grade because they will have managed to get twice as many points as were possible. And that's the way it's going to calculate. So you can do it either way. Just make sure that if you have designated that you want to display the grade as points, that you are putting those points in there, not the percentage that they got. Again, of course, if it's out of 100, it's not going to matter either way. If you want the grade to display in the gradebook, but you don't want it to count toward the final grade, check this box. Otherwise, it's going to count it, factor it in toward that final grade. And then the last thing that I need to set here is the submission type. So by default, usually when you come in here, submission type is going to be set to online. But in this example, all I want is a place to put the grades for my students for this test that they took in class. So I am just going to say on paper. What this will do is create that column in the gradebook for me, but it will not give the students anywhere to turn in something online. And in fact, if they look at this assignment in Canvas, they're going to see, oh, okay, this is on paper. And they'll know right off the bat that this isn't something that they are having to do through Canvas. So the rest of it, I don't even have to worry about any of this other stuff. I don't need to give it a due date. So just to kind of, since we took a little more time, so just to reiterate, all you will need to do to set up a gradebook column for an assignment, give it a title, give it a number of points. If you're using assignment groups, put it in a group, say how you want the grade to be displayed, and then select on paper, and you're done. You just come down here and click Save and Publish. So now, when I go to my gradebook, I can see I now have test 4 here. I've got a column that I can put my students' grades in. So you can always, when you come to your gradebook, you may see that sometimes your columns are a little too small. You can't even see the name of the item. So I do like to point out that you can hover over the line between the columns and you can always drag it to resize that item. So when you're looking at your gradebook, I want to point out a few things here. So you're going to see your total for your students. This is going to be always adjusting every time you enter a grade for your students. And this is always going to be what their total score is at the moment. The other thing that I want to point out here is that I promise I will get there. So the other thing that I want to point out here is that in addition to your assignment columns, you're also going to see group columns. So I can give a grade, right? So I just created this test 4 grade, so I can put a grade in here for this student. But I cannot edit this tests column here. This is going to automatically adjust and show me what percent the student has in this particular weighted group. So this is going to always show me the average. So I cannot come in here and put a score here. I can put scores into the individual assignments row here, but I cannot edit what is in this weighted group column. And you'll be able to tell the difference because it'll have it the weight listed at the top. So these are just telling me how many points it's out of. This is telling me what percent of the whole grade it is worth. And you'll notice that it's adjusting as well as I add additional items in. So I can put my scores in here for my students by just clicking on the little dash that is in the row next to the student's name for that item. I don't have to click save or anything. It's going to automatically, when I move on to the next row, it's going to automatically update. However, I will say that I have noticed sometimes that you do need to refresh your page. So you may need to click the little circular arrow at the top of your browser in order to see all of the changes that you've made. So it is in there, it is recording any changes that you've made, but for whatever reason, sometimes you have to click the refresh button before you can actually see that. In addition to being able to put a grade in by clicking on the dash, you're also going to have a little box with an arrow that will pop up, and you can click on that. And you're going to get this slide out menu here that's going to give you additional options. So I can put the grade in here rather than typing it into this little box. And then I also can give this item a status. You don't have to do this, but if you want to, you could mark the item as late, and this will let you and the student know that this item was late. If you're looking at the grade later, it's going to color code it, and you can say how many days late it is. You could mark it as being missing or excused. Additionally, you can leave a comment for the student and give them some more specific feedback other than the score. Now you'll see I have a late policy set up. I'll show you how to do that in a minute, but since I marked it late and said how many days late it was, it's going to automatically deduct points from their score based on my late penalty that I have set up. So I will show you how to do that in just a minute. So Cassandra, she asked if there's a way to show the letter grade rather than the number grade. So let me take you back to assignments quickly. So where I was just designating grades or the settings for an assignment, if I click on the assignment, I'll just go to it this way and click Edit. Under Display Grade As, I can designate to display it as a letter grade rather than a score. I'll show you in a minute how to set up a grading scheme for the course, but this is another place that you can do that. If you designate for the grade to be displayed as a letter grade, it's going to ask for your grading scheme. And so I'll show you in a minute how to do that through the settings, but this is another way that you can get to that. Also, setting up a grading scheme for the entire course, which I'll show you how to do, will allow the percentage to still show, but also to designate a letter grade for the students' grades. Okay, absolutely. So just a couple of other things here that I want to point out about our gradebook. So you can over here in any of these columns, if you're looking for the settings for that individual assignment or for that column, again, you're always looking for the kebab, and in the gradebook, you kind of have to hover over that column for the kebab to show up. So if I hover over the student name column, a couple things that I do want to show you. There's different ways that you can sort the names if you want to do reverse alphabetical, or if you want to do last name first or first name first, however you want to do that. But what I also want to show you, and I've gotten this question a couple times, is there a way to still see the grades that you've put in for a student who ends up dropping your class or being withdrawn from the class? The answer is yes. So you can get to those grades by coming here, clicking on that kebab, and if a student has withdrawn, that would be considered a concluded enrollment. So by default, it's not going to show in your view, but you can always click this button here and cause those concluded enrollment students to show up so that you can still access any grades that you had for them. Another thing here, just a kind of something that might make your life a little bit easier, this total, by default, it's going to be at the end of the gradebook column. But if you want to move it to the front so that your total score for each student is always right next to their name at the very front, you can again click on that kebab and click Move to Front, and it will put it right here so that it's right next to the students' names. So additionally here, you have different ways that you can arrange your columns for your gradebooks. So you can arrange by all kinds of different ways. A lot of times instructors, if they have due dates set for their assignments, they like to have it arranged newest to oldest, because that's going to put the most recent assignment at the front of the gradebook and then the older ones toward the back. But there's a lot of other ways that you can still rearrange your columns. You also could just do the old drag and drop if you wanted to. You can always just drag it over. There we go. And it will move. You can move your columns around that way if you'd like to. The other thing that I do want to point out is if you are an instructor who likes to combine your sections into the same shell, so maybe you're teaching 2 sections of the same course, but you only want to have to worry about maintaining one shell, so you've got them both combined. In that case, you can filter by the section. So I don't have that option here since this is a fake course that does not have more than one section, but when I go to filters and assignment groups, there would also be a sections button here that I can click, and that will allow me to filter the sections so that I'm only looking at one section's roster at a time over on the left. Additionally, down here under columns, you can always add a notes column to your gradebook. So this is not a perfect tool, but it is something that will allow you, if you want to be able to make notes that the students will not see. So obviously, as I showed you, you can make comments on individual assignments. Those are meant to be seen by the student. But if you wanted to maybe make a note to yourself to remember something and you didn't want the student to see it, the notes column would be the way to go for that. So you could type notes in here and then click save, and then you'll have those notes for future reference. And then finally, by default, the unpublished assignments will be visible in your course. So this usually pertains more to online or hybrid instructors, but just so that you know, if you have assignments in your course that you have not published yet, or maybe you have them in there, you don't want to delete them, but you're not going to assign them this semester, they're going to show up in your gradebook only for you. Your students won't see them by default, but you may want to come here and uncheck them so that they're removed from your gradebook view and they won't clutter up your gradebook. And then finally, for our last drop-down menu here, you also can export a hard copy, well, not a hard copy, another digital copy of your gradebook. So if you wanted to, you can export. This is going to be created in a CSV file, which you can open in Excel. You could print it, but it's not a real great printer-friendly version because it's such a long spreadsheet. But it is another way, if you like to be able to back up your grades, that you can keep that saved on your computer or wherever you like to keep that backup. So what I'll do now, and again, if you've got any questions, go ahead and type those in. But I want now to look at the individual assignment columns. So I'm going to click on my kebab just for this individual assignment here. I can also sort the individual grades for this assignment. If I wanted to, I could sort by whoever was missing, so I can easily see who has not turned the item in. I can also message students who. So if I click on this, this is going to allow me to, anyone who I have not graded their assignment, so this would probably be people that have not turned that assignment in yet, I can select that from the list, and I can send them a message saying, you know, you have not yet turned in this assignment. This is worth a certain number of points. Please get it turned in. You have a 0 right now, whatever I need to say. I can see who is getting this message, but the other students will not know that there are others who are also getting this message. As far as they know, this message was only meant for them. I also could select to message anyone who scored less than a certain score. So if you scored less than a 65 or whatever I want to set there again, or if I want to compliment the people who scored more than an 80, let's say, I can send them a message that says great job. So it's a very nice way to quickly be able to communicate with students about individual items without having to email them all individually. Another cool thing here, and this is especially helpful if you've got a large class or maybe you've got a couple of sections combined, is that you can set a default grade, and you could set a grade of 0 if you wanted for anybody who did not turn in an assignment, or whatever you wanted to, whatever default grade you wanted, and click Set Default Grade. It's going to let me know how many scores were updated, and now it's put zeros in for anybody that I designated for. So this can just kind of save you a little bit of time here. If you set to put your grades as a points or a percentage when you were setting up the assignment, and then you change your mind, you can always switch from points to percentage here. So if you had said, well, when I set up the assignment, it's worth 10 points, and I wanted to put points, but now I just want to put their percentage, you can switch that from here. And then finally, from here, this is where you can also set a grade posting policy for this individual assignment. So let's say that you are partway through grading and you're done for the day, but you don't want the students who have already had their assignment graded to get their grades yet. You want to wait until you've put grades in for everyone. You can come here and click on the grade posting policy, and it's going to default be set to automatic, but you can switch it to manual. And so you can say that you don't want these students to be made aware of their grades yet, and it was already set for this, which is why I wouldn't have to save it from here, but you can switch it to manual. They're not going to get notified about anything regarding this grade. Click Save, and now this is going to hide these grades from the students. When I am ready, I can come here and I can post the grades. So I've hidden them now, and any grades that I put in are going to be hidden from the students. So I can tell that this these grades are hidden right now because I've got an eyeball with a line through it in the upper left-hand corner. When I'm ready to let the students see their grades, I click on the kebab again and click Post Grades. And it's going to post the grades for this specific student because the rest of these students had already gotten their grades. This can get a little bit complicated sometimes because there are so many different stipulations if you've already put grades in that have already gone out. But the basic idea that probably works best is before you start putting grades in, if you want them to be hidden, just set that grade posting policy to manual, and then the students will not see their grades until you choose to post them. So now what I want to look at here is your grade policies for the semester. So I get to this by clicking on the gear in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. And the first thing that I'm going to see here are my late policies. So I can choose to automatically apply a grade for missing submissions. So where I just showed you a moment ago, you can click on the little box for an individual student and mark an item as missing. If you mark it missing, it can automatically put a 0 in for that student's grade. You can always still go back in and override that grade in the gradebook, but it will automatically do this by default. As I showed you a minute ago, I already had this set to take 10% off for each day that an item is missing or turned in late. And so it automatically deducted that 10% since that student turned her item in a day late. Now, I will say these are not super flexible because you have to apply this for every assignment. So it could be a time saver, or it might be something that you end up having to override a lot. So you could try it out, see if you like it, and if not, you could always come back and just uncheck these and click update, and it'll remove those policies. But the other thing that I want to look at from here that's important is this advanced column. So as I mentioned earlier, you don't have the capability to edit the student's total grade column. So you cannot go in there and let's say a student has an 89.9 average and you want to bump them up to a 90 so that they have an A because they worked really hard. You don't have the option to edit what's in that total column. So what Canvas has done is instead allowed a final grade override. So I would recommend, even if you don't know that if you'll need this or think that you'll need it, you can always go ahead and just check the box here to allow the final grade override. Click update. And what will happen is at the end, I'm going to have an override column here. And I already put these in earlier, which is why they're in there. But for this individual student, if I wanted to be able to change what's in this total column to either, bump them up a little bit so that their score reflects the effort, I can put that score into the override column. The student is not going to see that there is an override column. All they're going to see is whatever grade you gave them in the override. That's what they will see in their total column in their gradebook view. You don't have to put them in for everybody in the override column. So the ones that you want to keep, you can just leave in the total column and not put anything in their override box. But it is nice because it will give you the option to be able to bump them up if you need to, or even if there's somebody absent a lot or something that you want to take a few points from, you could always do that as well in this override column. Okay. Are there any questions about anything so far? We're actually going to get out of the gradebook so that I can show you how to set up your grading scheme. James had asked if it's possible to move the override feature to the front, and you can drag it to where you would like for it to go. All right, anybody else has questions, feel free to type them in, but in the meantime, I am going to move on to the grading scheme. So to get to this, I need to click on the course settings, and that is always going to be the last option at the bottom of your navigation menu in the course. And then I am going to scroll down. You have to scroll down a little ways. You can see what each of these things are if you look over on the left-hand side. And I'm going to scroll down until I see this grading scheme option. So as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, if you are setting up an assignment and you have set it to give a letter grade rather than any percent or points, it's going to ask you right then and there, it's going to prompt you to set up your grading scheme. But you can actually just go ahead and do that for the course. And that way it's not just going to give that letter grade for that individual assignment, it will also assign a letter grade for the student's total score. So I need to check this box that says Enable Course Grading Scheme. And then I need to check or click on this link that says Set Grading Scheme. Now, by default, Canvas has put in this grading scheme that includes pluses and minuses, and as you probably know, Camden County College does not use pluses and minuses. There is not a way, unfortunately, to override this by default, which is kind of silly, I think, on their part, but anyway. So what you will need to do is come up here in the upper right-hand corner and click on Select Another Scheme. Now, I have already put in CCC Standard, so the majority of the departments here at Camden County College use this grading scheme, so 90 to 100, 80 to 90, 70 to 80, and so on. If this is what your department uses, you can click Use this grading standard, and it will apply that to your course. I know some individual departments have contacted me, and I've set up an automotive department, dental department, HIT, and Our Lady of Lourdes Nursing. So I've got grading schemes that are specific for these departments already loaded in here. So if you're in one of those departments, you can click on that. If you're in a department that you know for sure does not use one of these grading schemes or the standard grading scheme for the college, you could always ask your department chair to contact me, and I'd be happy to make this a add your department's grading scheme to the list. So once you've selected the one that you want, you can click Use this grading standard. If I don't have your department's grading scheme in here yet, and you want to go ahead and create your own, you can click Cancel, and rather than selecting another scheme, you'll come down here and click on Manage Grading Schemes. And then you'll see all of the ones that we already have, or you can click this Add Grading Scheme button, and it will allow you to create your own. Now, it's not going to show up for anybody else to choose from, but any grading schemes that you create on your own will show up for you to designate as the grading scheme for any of your courses. Unfortunately, you do have to do this for all of your courses. It's not going to apply. I mean, once you've created the grading scheme, it will save it, and you can select that scheme for all of your courses, but you're still going to have to go into the settings and select that grading scheme for each course. The good news is if you replicate a course from one semester to the next, it will keep that grading scheme in there for the next semester as well. Are there any questions about grading schemes or anything else? So I've been getting some questions about how grades are going to be submitted for your final grades for this semester, and as far as I know, you will still be submitting them through WebAdvisor. However, things can change, but as far as I know, that will still be the method for this semester. From what I've heard, the plan will be that Canvas will be the way that grades will be submitted officially at the end of the semester. I'm thinking that they may try to roll it out over the summer to pilot it to have it ready for fall. But again, that's not written in stone, and it's definitely not my decision on when and how that happens. It's just that I know I have instructors that are asking, so I'm trying to kind of let people know what I've been told. But it's a good idea to get used to using the Canvas gradebook, because that way, once that change does come around, you're going to be comfortable with it, and it won't be a big deal for you to switch to using that as your way of submitting your grades. So I'm going to open up now if you have any questions about the Canvas gradebook, or even if you've got other questions that are not necessarily related to the gradebook that you'd like to ask, you can do that. If you don't have any questions, you're free to go. I will say that in about an hour after the ending of the webinar, you'll receive an email from Go to Training, and it's going to have a couple things in it. The first is my contact information. Again, I'm Jenny McGee in the e-learning division, and it's going to also have my colleague Rose's contact information as well in case you have any questions or need help with anything. The other thing it's going to have is our open lab hours. So if you have not gotten those in a while or don't know what I'm talking about, we have a computer lab down the hall from us that we open up, and we are available for you during our open lab hours, so that if you need to come in and have us sit with you, or you just want to come in and work and then holler if you need us, the room is available for you to use, and we're available for you. So that schedule will also be sent as part of that email as well. The only thing we ask is, if you're making a special trip out here just for the open lab hours, we always suggest shoot us an email. There's only 2 of us in this department, and we're generally available, but we just would want to make absolutely sure that we're here for you if you are planning on coming in. So, James, are you talking about if you're grading an assignment that was submitted in Canvas and you're using SpeedGrader? So if I open up my assignments tab, and let's say I've got assignment 1 here, and I'm looking at my students' submissions through SpeedGrader. So this is a fake assignment, but if my student had submitted something, it would be over here. I can put the assignment, or I can put the grade in here, click submit, and yes, it will be submitted directly to the gradebook. So if I'm grading the assignment in the assignments tab view, any grade that I assign to it will automatically be put into the gradebook as well. Okay, absolutely. Yeah, so the SpeedGrader is directly connected to the gradebook. So, Cassandra, I believe it's using like a bell curve. I had an instructor that Cassandra's asking about the grade feature. I had an instructor that used curving, and it ended up, for some people, actually lowering their grade and so we kind of did some research, and it seems very complicated. I can send you the information that I have on it. It basically was like a mathematical formula for how to figure out what grade to put in as the curve. So it's definitely something that is doable, but I mean, this was like a PDF document that was multiple pages long on figuring out what to put in as a curve. So if you're interested in that, I can send that to you, but it's not really like a simple answer. Liz, so attendance, are you you're talking about the attendance tool that is in Canvas? No, let me. I'm going to enable that so everyone can see the attendance tool. Okay, so the attendance tool in Canvas, this is actually an external app. So Canvas did not create this tool, but it's one that's used widely and automatically enabled. So it has some definite limitations. It is far from perfect. So when you're taking your attendance in here, for those of you that don't know what it is, you can come to the gradebook. Now that I've enabled it, it will show up here. And let me hang on, let me put a attendance in here so it will show up. So it's not going to show up in your gradebook unless you've actually used it. Let me mark everyone as present. and go to my grades. Okay, so it's going to be called the roll call attendance tool. And if you want to edit the settings for it, you need to come to the Gradebook and find that column and click on that assignment, and then go to Edit Assignment Settings. So basically, Nathaniel, you'll have to go to your settings and click on Navigation, and you'll have to enable that app. So it's probably disabled for yours. So if you want to change the number of points it's worth, if you want to change what assignment group it's in, you can do all that from here and click Save. And it's going to automatically deduct points for each time you mark a student as late or absent. So if I click on the roll call settings, you can change what percent of a presence the roll call counts, or as a late, what percent of a presence does it deduct for each time a student is late. So that's in there, and you can edit that as well. You can do an attendance report that you can send. The main weakness of the roll call attendance tool is that it's not, if you try to get a report from it, and if you've used it and seen the report that's generated, it's kind of a huge mess. Like if you're looking for an easy attendance report at the end of the semester, it's not a great tool to use to try to get anything usable that you can like turn in as your attendance report. My honest advice for this would be, if you want, you can use it for your attendance tool just as a way of keeping track, but you may want to, within the gradebook, you may want to set it so that it does not count this as part of the final grade. It's still going to show up here in the gradebook, but if you click on that assignment and go to Edit Assignment Settings, you can come down here and click Don't Count Toward the Final Grade. This will allow you to still use the tool so that you can keep track of when people are absent. And then I would just create a separate assignment called attendance, and then just give them an attendance grade. That would be my recommendation, only because it's just a very cumbersome tool to try to use to get, and a lot of times people don't deduct points every time someone is late or every time someone is absent. So that creates another issue as well. So if you just use it to keep track, then you can use the information it gives you to create an attendance assignment and then put whatever grade you want in it. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of a complicated tool. Okay, so yeah, and I mean you can do it however you want. It's just the way that it's set up, you don't have a whole lot of freedom to really manipulate the settings a lot as far as what it's deducting each time. So if you've added it as a weighted group, that's awesome. You will still have to add at least one assignment to that weighted group called attendance so that you can put grades in for it, because you can't put grades directly into a weighted group column, if that makes sense. Okay. So I don't know how helpful that answer was for you, Liz. I've done a lot of research on this tool, and mainly what I found is a lot of complaints in the campus community about the attendance tool and its shortcomings. So I'm not going to say don't use it, but it's leaves a lot to be desired, and I'm hoping maybe Canvas will come out with their own attendance tool that works better than what we have. We were very excited about it when we first found out that it was there, but it turned out to have a lot of shortcomings. And I will say that I have found a way, if you do use it or you want to use it just as a way to keep track, I have found a way to create a pivot table from the Excel spreadsheet that's generated that actually, so after a little bit of manipulation, it does turn into a very nice report. And so I will say it's a little more than like I can get into today, but if it's something that you still want to use it, you could always email the report it generates to me, and I can show you how to turn it into a nice report that you can use. But it just takes some manipulation in Excel to be able to generate a nice report that's a little more usable. Absolutely. Yeah, so that's something more, yeah, just email me if that's something that you're really wanting to use, and I can kind of show you what I'm talking about with the way that the report comes out and what we can do with it. Any other questions about anything? All right, thank you so much, James. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. So I'm going to hang out here. Thank you, Cassandra. Have a great weekend. I'll hang out here for a few more minutes, so if anybody else has any questions, you can type them in there. But otherwise, I wish all of you a wonderful weekend and a great semester. I'm sure I'll see a lot of you next Tuesday and opening day. And in the meantime, if you have any questions or problems or you need help, feel free to contact me. You'll be getting your my contact information in your email shortly if you do not have it already. So thank you so much for taking the time to come out and do this today.